Great Yorkshire Business on Great Yorkshire Radio.
Now, if you're in business, I've got a staggering little statement that I found out from, we've got it off the internet actually, so it must be true. And this is it. 27% of invoices are paid late. That's a staggering amount of invoices. And it's a pleasure today to be joined by Eoin Hirst from the Civil Enforcement Agency. Eoin, you help people with recovering some of these. We're not going to use them bad debts, are we? We're going to use the phrase people who forgot to pay.
Well, they are the people who you've invoiced, and for one reason or another, personal to them, they haven't settled the bill, and it's really just a business way of making sure you get your money.
So how do you help businesses then?
Well, we've moved on. We are a bailiff company. There's no getting away from that. And we do bailiff enforcement, but we don't do it as you see on the TV, can't pay, won't pay, and the other ones. We're not big men with bald heads. We're middle-aged businessmen who can deal with your business debts in a business-related manner. We can deal with your clients, and we can get them out sorted in an amicable and reasonable way so that you don't lose your customer.
Right, okay. Well, what's one of the most important things then? Because what about terms and conditions? Are they very important?
They're the most crucial thing to your business debts, is that you've got to make sure your customer knows what they're paying, how they're paying it, and most importantly, when they're paying it. So you've got to give them invoice terms. Ours, for example, are payable immediately. Most standard ones are 30 days. You've got to then be aware that after 30 days, you've got to know that it's not been paid, or it has been paid, so that you can mark it off.
Right, okay.
One of the simplest ways of doing that, although it's not really my area, is to have your accounting software on the cloud, because then it will show you what your old accounts are.
Okay. And on the T's and C's, is it important to actually get that sorted before you actually invoice somebody? Because many people just have it on the back of the invoice. Is that too late, do you think?
It is. It's fine. If the customer hasn't signed your T's and C's when they start, then sending them an invoice with T's and C's is too late, because they've not agreed to any terms before you've invoiced them. You need to have them agree to it. We send our terms out with the order details. Somebody makes an order instruction for us to do some work. We send them a quote. We also send them a copy of our T's and C's, and we also provide them with a link to the T's and C's on the website, so they don't have to print it. They can access it any time, and it tells them exactly that. It tells them how they've to pay, when they've to pay, and how much they have to pay.
Right, okay. And Ian, you work with businesses. It's one of the questions that somebody may be asking just in their mind now as we're talking now, for you to chase somebody who's forgot to pay, is it going to be costly for them, for a business?
I was just writing that down, Steve, because there are some companies that charge. Solicitors will charge you for letters before action to get your debts collected. We work on the basis of having the debtor, your client, pay the bill, because it's him that's caused you to have to chase it up anyway. And we do that in two ways, both of which are legislated for. The government introduced legislation many years ago called the Late Payment of Business Debts Regulations. And that allowed many years ago for you to charge either £40 or £70 compensation depending on the level of the invoice. And recently they also brought in that you can add to that your reasonable recovery costs. So what we do as a business now is we don't charge our customer. We charge them nothing. If we collect the debt, we will give the customer 100% of the debt back, and we will get all the fees from your client, and that's legislated for. So if they don't pay our fees, we can take action to recover our fees from them.
Right, so there's no cost to the business that you're working with?
No cost. We are a cost-free debt recovery cash flow system that they can use. I mean, you might be interested. Every week, businesses spend at least 3 hours a week chasing bad debts, when they should be either out getting new business or completing business that they've already got. And really, it's 3 hours wasted. If they want, we can provide them with a free service to do that 3 hours for them,
right, okay,
at no cost.
Okay.
And we will recover 90% of their debts.
Well, just exploring that a bit more then. So let's say somebody's, they've sent the invoice out, and let's say the invoice terms are 30 days, it's not paid. Many companies will sort of start chasing that debt for weeks. Is it a good idea that as soon as it's not paid and they've maybe sent a reminder out that they could hand it over to somebody like you?
Well, that's right. We can be part of their cash flow system where, all right, after 30 days, you're not going to instruct us after 30 days, but you're going to send out the customer, maybe a statement of what he owes. You may even follow that up with a letter saying you haven't paid these invoices. But to be frank, if he's not going to contact you regarding those, you're just wasting your postage. The difference is when he gets a letter from a bailiff company, it doesn't concern him, but it makes him realise that you're willing to take it further. And you're willing to take it all the way to court if need be.
Right, okay.
Although you're not going to do that in many cases. It's going to be, in most cases, in 90% of the business debts, they are recovered within 7 to 14 days without any further action.
That's amazing.
Simply by telephones, letters and emails.
Right, okay. Anyway, we must stress this is about business debt. This is not domestic.
It's not domestic. It's not personal debt. It's not any utilities. It's not domestic rates. It's nothing like that. We are purely collecting business to business debts or business to business invoices that are being paid late.
Yeah.
And we are generating payment for you, as opposed to the option you've got. If you didn't want to do that, would be to factor the invoice. The only unfortunate thing with factoring is, although they will pay you immediately, if the invoice isn't paid, they don't chase it for you. They send you the invoice back. Right. So you don't achieve anything by factoring, because the factoring company will send you back any bad debts for you to collect yourself.
Right, okay. And just another thought on the invoicing then, because maybe you come across this, I don't know, because it's very important to make sure that you're invoicing the right person, isn't it?
It is. We've had invoices where, not giving anybody's name away, but it'll say Gary at something restaurant, or just Frank. I've even had one where it's just had the restaurant's name, no address. And in most of those cases, the restaurant, a lot of times it's restaurants, are limited companies, and our client hasn't invoiced the limited company, and frankly the person they've invoiced has no liability to pay it because he has not received the goods.
Right. So we're back to getting things right in the first place, which helps make your job easier.
That's right. You've got to do the boring things and get all your processes in place to make sure, even as a sole trader, you need to know who you're invoicing, how much he's paying, when he's paying it, and the fact that he knows. And until you've got all those in order, you're never going to collect on your bad debt. And unfortunately, the serial late payers, if they see that on an invoice, they will take you to the cleaners, really. They will realise that you've not billed the right person and they just won't pay.
Yeah, okay. It's a bit like, you've not put an I on the right place, or dotted the I or crossed the T's. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, yesterday I sent a batch of invoices out, and on the invoice it had the limited company, but it had 5 initials for the limited company. But I sent them an accompanying letter saying, although we've used the initials on the invoice, we are invoicing, and I spelt out the company. It wouldn't fit in the invoice.
Oh, I see, in the invoice box.
So we've used the shortened heading in the invoice, but in a letter we've explained we are invoicing this company limited.
Right.
So that they are under no illusion. We also put on our invoices that we are aware of the late payment of invoice regulations.
Okay.
So that when they get the invoice, they can see that we know that should they not pay, we can charge them legislative fees. Right. And we will.
Okay. And is that a percentage that adds up every month or something if they're late?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. There's a standard set compensation fee, however late it is.
Okay.
You can also, as I said, charge your reasonable recovery costs, which are our recovery costs. You can also charge interest from 30 days after the invoice, when the invoice is due. So 30 days after it's due, you can then charge 8% interest, 8% above base rate.
Wow.
At the moment, to make it simple, we just charge 8%, which is obviously 8% above base rate, but it should be 8 and a bit, but it's easier to just charge the 8%, which can, if the invoice is 120, 160 days old, 60, 70 pence a day can add up to a tidy sum on top of what you're already owed.
So Ian, you're based here in Yorkshire, okay, but I guess you work across the UK.
Well, we do work nationally. We don't work in Scotland because they have different rules and regulations, but England and Wales is no problem to us. We do most of the work, a large percentage is by mail, email and phone, so there's no problem working across the UK. We can also generate a personal visit if that's really required, but in the vast majority of cases it isn't. But we can send somebody who looks like a businessman to call on the business and personally explain to them what's required, that they need to pay. And that quite often that gives you a lot of kudos with your client, because they know that you mean what you say. We've even had a recent client who we went and collected his debt of £2,500 that was 3 months, 4 months old, and having collected it and paid our fees, the customer has gone back to our client to order more goods. So you're not going to lose your client, you're going to gain a client.
And that's one of the big sort of doubts that some people may have when they're chasing money, that they may lose a client. But hey, ultimately, if the client's not paying you, it's not really worth doing business with them, is it?
Well, it isn't, but maybe they've just got a policy of paying late if they get chased. And maybe once you start chasing them, they'll realise that you're a businessman who does business properly. And they will pay you either in advance or on time, because they know that you're going to chase them and it's going to cost them money.
Right. So everybody wins really in the end.
They
You
do,
can retain business. And so Ian, if people want to get in touch with you, if you've got, if you're a business there and you've been chasing some money and you'd like some help, how can people contact you?
They can ring our office, which is based in Leeds, obviously, in West Yorkshire, on 0845 643 0635, and that's answered from 7 in the morning till 8, 9 at night.
Brilliant.
And somebody will deal with your problem.
Right. Ian, big thank you for joining us today and sharing this really valuable information.
Thank you, Steve. Nice to be here.
Great Yorkshire Business on Great Yorkshire Radio.